In this account, we follow the story of a man who, despite his rigidity and role within an empire defined by strength and discipline, had his life profoundly and unexpectedly transformed. Longinus, a Roman centurion, witnessed a moment beyond any human understanding: the death of Jesus Christ. His experience goes far beyond the cold observation of a soldier. It is an encounter that moves the heart, redefines perceptions, and invites us to reflect on the power of faith and transformation, even in the most unlikely environments. The faint light of dawn began to color the horizon with soft hues of orange and pink, while a silent crowd gathered around the rugged hill known as Golgotha. In the center of that dry and tense scene stood a cross. There, Jesus was about to be crucified. Among the soldiers organizing everything with rigor and discipline stood the firm figure of a Roman centurion. His gaze was serious, reflecting the awareness that something extraordinary was about to happen. What occurred that day goes beyond common explanation. A violent earthquake shook the ground, unsettling everyone present. The light of the rising sun seemed to retreat, as if nature itself hesitated before what was about to be revealed. The earth opened, deep cracks split stones with sharp sounds breaking the silence. Even accustomed to the brutality of war and the weight of leadership, that officer felt a strange reaction, as if a chill ran down his spine. His eyes remained fixed on the crucified man, and something changed inside him. An unexpected feeling replaced indifference. It was not mere shock, but a deep recognition. His words, dried by amazement, finally emerged. Truly, this was the Son of God. This declaration is recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 54. Although this centurion appears only a few times in Scripture, his presence is significant. Who was he? What was the importance of the position he held? And what happened to him after that day? Being a centurion was no simple task. It was a position reserved for the most valiant men, those who had demonstrated bravery and unquestionable loyalty to the Roman Empire. He commanded a unit of about 100 soldiers, the century, and held total authority over them. It was not enough to be skilled in war. It was essential to lead, decide quickly, discipline, and protect. These officers represented the discipline and rigor of the Roman army, maintaining order both in battle and in times of calm. Crucifixion was a severe punishment, intended to intimidate and control, applied to criminals and insurgents. Cruel, yet effective. In Jesus' case, the soldiers followed orders. They controlled the crowd, kept watch attentively, and performed the rituals involved in the execution. Among them, they divided the condemned man's clothes. As the Gospel of John recounts, chapters 19, verses 23 and 24, the soldiers divided the garments into 4 parts, but the tunic, being seamless and woven in one piece, was kept intact and cast lots for. A simple, mechanical act that fulfilled ancient prophecies. While Jesus suffered, not everyone watched the same way. Some mocked, others watched passively. Yet there were those who could not look away, like the centurion. He did not see merely a man dying, but something beyond pain and scorn, something hidden from most. His final declaration, spoken in the shadow of the cross, remains a symbol. He represents all those who, even coming from outside, recognize the truth when it is presented clearly and inevitably. His testimony did not arise from theories or texts, but from direct experience. It was not necessary to understand the full depth of that scene. It was enough to see, feel, and recognize. Perhaps this is one of the deepest lessons of this story. Even the hardest hearts can be reached by the truth when it is presented with clarity and power. The centurion was not among Jesus' followers, nor did he have interest in the spiritual matters surrounding him. Even so, he did not leave that place the same way he entered. May others, upon hearing and reflecting on this story, also be touched and transformed. If this content resonated with you in some way, consider subscribing to the channel. This helps us continue bringing serious, well-founded, and intense reflections on the scriptures and their characters. Activate the notification bell to receive alerts for new videos as soon as they are published. During his time among men, Jesus maintained an attitude that defied all human logic. He faced accusations, injustices, and humiliations without ever stepping away from what he carried within. an authority that did not need to impose itself by shouting or force. Among the most revealing moments of his life, perhaps none showed more clearly who he truly was than the instance of his trial and death. Before the Sanhedrin, surrounded by religious leaders determined to condemn him, Jesus remained calm. The accusations came like sparks, thrown by voices that distorted the truth, but he did not allow himself to be disturbed. He preferred silence. He spoke only when necessary, and his words carried the weight of eternity. When questioned by the high priest, he responded with clarity and firmness. He did not try to defend himself, only declared his identity, affirming that they would see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Almighty, coming on the clouds. He was not seeking to convince, only telling the truth. With Pilate, the scene repeated. New accusations, political pressure, a heavy atmosphere of fear and manipulation. Still, Jesus remained calm. He did not engage in debates, nor try to justify himself. He knew what awaited him and faced everything with dignity. When he was scourged, crowned with thorns and mocked by the soldiers, he did not respond with hatred or anger. His serenity contrasted with the brutality of those who mistreated him, a confrontation between human cruelty and a peace that does not come from this world. On the cross, that same serenity manifested in words capable of touching even the hardest of hearts. He asked forgiveness for those who crucified him. He did not curse, demand justice, or defend himself. He addressed the Father, asking forgiveness for men who did not even understand what they were doing. Amid the pain, he offered mercy. I watched it all. The earth reacted to what was happening. A tremor shook the ground, and crowds fell to their knees. The light disappeared in the middle of the day, plunging everything into dense darkness. These were not ordinary events, but signs that seemed to respond to that death. When everything ended, there was still more. Tombs opened, and righteous men and women who had died were seen alive in Jerusalem. Something inexplicable had happened. Something greater than the nails, greater than the cross. What I witnessed that day was unlike any previous battle or execution. Everything indicated that this death was not the end of a man, but the beginning of something the world still needed to learn to understand. The hill was silent, the air heavy. Amid the pain and confusion, the centurion kept his eyes fixed on the man suspended between heaven and earth. What he saw went beyond common understanding. It was not just suffering. There was a presence there that challenged all his beliefs. For the first time in many years, he found himself without words to name what he felt. He looked again, but now not as an executioner, but as someone deeply touched by a revelation that imposed itself effortlessly. Almost without realizing it, he murmured to himself, "Truly, this was the Son of God." The confession escaped like an ancient sigh, held back by years of hardening. He wasn't repeating someone else's idea, but acknowledging something that had taken root in his heart. In his military life, the centurion had witnessed broken men, overtaken by fear in the face of death. But that man was different. Even under torture, insults, spitting, and abandonment, he carried a serenity that transcended this world. Amid thorns, spears, and blood, the scene was marked by a silence that said more than any cry. As the crowd dispersed and the day slowly resumed its course, the centurion stayed there, not out of obligation, but because he knew he couldn't simply leave as if nothing had happened. Something inside him had been turned upside down. The echoes of the shouts still rang. The images of the trial, the words of forgiveness, the signs surrounding that death, all intertwined into a revelation he could no longer ignore. He was no longer the same. A war-hardened officer had been touched by something that not even 1,000 swords could wound. In that place where so many came to die, he began to truly live. According to Christian traditions, this centurion who witnessed Jesus' death came to be known as Longinus. After that moment, he abandoned his old life. He left behind the rigid Roman discipline not because he lost his sense of duty, but because he found a greater cause, a truth worth living for. Longinus chose to follow Jesus' path. The message he heard from that crucified man became the foundation of his new life. He spoke of what he saw with the authority of an eyewitness. He was not just a sympathizer, he was someone transformed by the experience. Contrary to what many might imagine, His conversion was not an escape but a conscious surrender. He knew the challenges ahead would be great, but also that there was no turning back. What makes this story even more significant is that this recognition came from someone unexpected. At that time, most of Jesus' followers were from the Jewish people, familiar with the ancient promises. Longinus, however, was a foreigner, a Gentile, a soldier serving an oppressive empire. Yet, he was touched. This reveals something profound. Jesus' message transcended borders, cultures, and languages. It reached the human heart wherever there was openness to the truth. But this choice brought consequences. Leaving the ranks of Rome to follow that condemned man as a subversive did not go unnoticed. He faced opposition, threats, and interrogations. Soon his faith began to trouble others. And like so many others, he paid dearly for not denying what he had seen with his own eyes. Longinus did not escape the consequences of his decision to follow Christ. On the contrary, he suffered cruelly and relentlessly. The brutality he was subjected to had a single goal: to silence his voice and erase his faith. They cut out his tongue so he would no longer proclaim what he had witnessed. They gouged out his eyes as if wanting to erase from his soul the light he had received. But neither pain nor mutilation could erase the truth that had transformed his inner being. Even under torture, Longinus did not surrender. His loyalty remained firm even when every fiber of his body pleaded for relief. His courage in the face of persecution not only kept his faith alive, but became an example for countless others throughout the centuries. His memory crossed generations as a silent yet powerful testimony of someone who chose fidelity above all else. Over time, Longinus came to be remembered with reverence among the faithful. Many turned to him, especially those who faced difficulties related to sight. Among the traditions surrounding him, there is one that says he was born with some kind of eye problem, and it was precisely at the most unexpected moment that something extraordinary happened. When he pierced Jesus' side with the spear, as recorded in the Gospels, part of the blood and water that flowed out reached his eyes. According to tradition, it was at that moment that his sight was restored. A gesture that, from a human perspective, seems cruel, became for him the sign of a miracle. The restoration of his eyes was not only physical but spiritual. There was born a new way of seeing life. It was no longer seeing with the eyes of the world, but with the eyes of faith. This profound experience consolidated in his heart the certainty of Jesus' identity, leading him to fully embrace the truth that had reached him. For this reason, many began to seek his intercession in times of need, especially concerning matters related to vision. His story crossed continents and generations, not as a myth, but as a reminder that transformation is possible even in the most unexpected situations. It is important to remember that, although this tradition about the visual impairment and the miracle is not recorded in the scriptures, it is part of the rich heritage of faith surrounding this unique figure. What makes this account so powerful is the clarity with which it reveals that a simple encounter with Jesus can completely transform a life. The one who was entrusted to ensure the execution of a condemned man was touched by something much greater than a professional duty. He didn't just see, he understood. He didn't just follow orders, he was transformed. The recognition that the man on the cross was the Son of God did not come from complex doctrines, but from a heart open to divine revelation. Longinus chose to leave his former life behind and follow the truth revealed on that hill, marked by pain. His next steps were guided by the desire to proclaim what he had witnessed, that redemption is available to all who sincerely turn to Christ. From then on, his journey became a source of inspiration for many, not as a hero, but as someone who allowed himself to be touched and shaped, even amid difficulties. Longinus's story teaches us that no life is beyond the reach of the change that faith can bring. His conversion shows that, regardless of the past or circumstances, the encounter with truth can produce radical transformation. He chose to abandon what he knew to embrace a new path, showing that sincere surrender and the courage to follow what we believe are essential for any spiritual journey. May this story inspire all of us to look beyond what is visible, to recognize opportunities for change, and to keep alive the hope that light can emerge even in the darkest moments. And may we, like Longinus, allow ourselves to be touched by truth and carry forward this flame of faith and renewal. If you were touched by this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps us continue bringing content that builds up, inspires, and deepens understanding of the scriptures and the lives intertwined within them. Activate the notification bell to receive alerts for the upcoming videos and join us on this journey of faith and learning.